One thing that's often a consideration when we're recording music here in town is what we call demoitis. One of the great things about that record with Post Malone was they really didn't have any demos at all. They were coming fresh from kind of writing sessions, and it was just guys singing into an iPhone kind of thing. So I'd say we all left a good amount of DNA on that record because we weren't boxed in any way, shape, or form.
Today I have Nashville musician and producer Derek Wells. What are you working on currently that's exciting?
Man, right now I'm comping a vocal on one of my artists, Brooke Lee. She's got an EP coming out beginning of the year, so that's what I'm staring at right now. And before that, I was playing some guitars on a project for a girl named Casey Tyndall, who also writes here that we are really excited about. And the last two things I did Thursday and Friday were sessions for Kane Brown. So it's the last 3 business days in my life. How about that?
How do you choose what role you're playing?
Yeah, good question. You mean some of that's predetermined? Like I try to be, I try to be really aware of what hat I'm supposed to be wearing that day. Um, on these projects, like for Brooke and Casey, I've kind of always been their producer, and a few years down the road with both of them, and this is just kind of the natural flow of things. We've got a rhythm of how we record and pick songs and the process for cutting vocals and all that kind of stuff. But then, like last week, my dear friend Dan Huff, who's a legend, is producing Kane. He's always produced those records. And if I'm hired, by Dan to just go play guitar, I make sure and stay in my lane, so to speak. I'm definitely gonna bring up ideas and speak my piece. But Dan's in total control of those scenarios, and for me, it's actually nice to just sit back and only play guitar and kind of only wear the one hat that day. Because oftentimes I'm playing and I'm recording and I'm mixing or I'm editing. And then, there's a whole kind of executive hat I have to wear here at Spirit for the publishing side, which is another thing. So it's always interesting.
So you do have things where you actually do guitar work and edit and produce.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. A lot of the hardy stuff has always been that way for me. And I mean, you know, the way I play guitar on stuff that I'm producing has definitely changed over the years. Um, everything started for me as a guitar player. So when I first started to produce, it almost felt like I had to play guitar. That it was like almost that was part of the skill set that people were hiring. Um, but eventually, people got comfortable enough with my process and producing stuff that I was able to just get someone else to do the tracking, out on the floor, and we'd cut the band tracks so that I can be in the control room and focus more that way. And then I always add some stuff I always come in and sweeten the spot or double something that they played on the tracking day or add a part that I hear. But my role has definitely evolved, how I play guitar when it's something I'm producing for sure.
How much of it when you play guitar now is by yourself, like you do it there and send it off? Are you with the artist a lot?
Man, Nashville's amazing because I do think we're kind of the last place where every day, in this city, all across town in studios, there are bands cutting with artists. We're one of the last strongholds for making music that way. Um, so I would still say, largely maybe 70-30 where I'm with an artist. Because even if I'm overdubbing here in my studio, um, it's so easy for artists to swing by and come be here, or an artist and a producer. I mean, I was doing some tracks for Dan and Shay a month or two ago, and Dan and their producer Scott Hendricks, or who co-produces those records with Dan, they came by here and just hung out while we did guitars. My experience is that people like to be there. They enjoy the process. Um, and the stuff that I do that's like true remote, is typically people that, don't live here. It just doesn't make sense for them to fly to Nashville to do one song or something. Or there's a real time crunch. And it's, I call them a, country music emergency, where, maybe somebody has a thing that they realize in the, 11th hour needs a couple extra parts. And that's the kind of stuff when I'm like, man, I'm slammed, but if you'll send me files, I can knock it out at like 5 in the morning tomorrow. Just let me know, that kind of thing. Uh, but I would still say, 70% of the time I'm with an artist or with a band, doing the recording part.
Within the last year or something, you've played something that you're super proud of. You're like, this is me right now. This is my sound.
I mean, I guess it's getting closer to 2 years now, though. I'm really proud of that Post Malone F1 Trillion record we made, and I'm proud of a lot of the stuff I played on there, and I do think that's um, that stuff sounded like me. For he gave us a lot of license, making that record.
See, I always wondered if it was already set or how much free reign you'd have on it.
It's case to case and artist to artist and song to song, and I have lived every single iteration of that. I have been on sessions where they said, like, hey, we love every single thing about this demo, but like for whatever reason, legal wise, we can't use it, or it's in the wrong key. Like, hey, our artist loves this, everything about this demo, but we've got to bring it down 2 steps. So I need you guys to learn every part as close as we can. Like, let's just learn every single thing and play it in C instead of D kind of situations. And I've done that. I've also, the other end of that coin is, I have been recording songs where someone says, hey, we love this song, but we are not happy with how the demo came out. In fact, we might not even want to play you the demo because we don't want to, color your opinion of it out of the gate. We'd rather just you guys do what you do. And then all the colors in the middle, where it's like, we had a guitar vocal, like, you guys know what to do, or you know we think we can change a lot of this, but we do like this one guitar part, like I referenced earlier. So I've seen every version of that at this point in my career. It's like I always say, like, nothing's sacred and everything's sacred. You approach it case to case, and try to read the room on the song.
Do you have a preference? Do you like it to be more structured when it comes in, or do you like to be able to do whatever you want?
To me, I truly do enjoy the balance, because from a technician standpoint, um, there is something kind of that I enjoy about, if I show up and the job is, hey, we're copying this demo, um, I kind of put the helmet on there, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to lock in, and I'm going to copy this, but I'm going to try my best to, like, improve. Maybe I can improve the tones, 5%, or like, I'm going to copy this, but if they're okay with it, I might change this one note. But there's also, it's fun for me to learn what someone else did. A lot of times there's these cool, kind of interesting, singer songwriter guitar parts that are what made people lean into the song in the first place. And I enjoy the challenge of learning that and thinking about it from someone else's perspective. And now, if I did that all day, every day, and never got a chance to just be creative or go out there and kind of throw paint myself, I think it would start to feel a little bit kind of, like working the coal mine, so to speak. But it can be also become exhausting to go in there day after day after day after day, and then just be like, hey, make something out of nothing here, you know? Um, I think if it got too heavy-handed on either side, and I've experienced seasons of that, where certain producers are a little more inclined to kind of chase parts, and you spend a few weeks working on one record, and you're like, boy, I would love for someone to tell me what to play right now, because I'm kind of, my creative sponge is drying up a little bit. Uh, but again, the opposite can be true, where you're like, man, could I just play guitar and not come in here and have it feel like it's a, homework assignment, to just scope these parts over and over. But yeah, that's why these are why they say, this is a service industry. Being a studio musician is definitely, we are there to make their record. I'm not there to make a Derek Wells record. So that it all comes, with the territory.
You said about your sponge getting dry and stuff.
Yeah.
Do you have to make time to take a break?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And that, because that is the analogy I use all the time is, when a sponge is wet, when you dip it in the water and you bring it out, the ideas flow through. So like when you're fresh and you're rested, and um creativity is not usually the hard part for me. Um but yeah, man, when that sponge is dry, you can't wring any more water out of it. It's toast, and uh I've learned little ways just over the years. I've learned how I work. I know when I need breaks, and uh for me it's really getting away from the instrument completely. Like that's everyone's different, but I always say, like, I spend so much time on output mode that I need to be on input. I need to just watch movies and listen to, TV scores, and listen to music recreationally, go for a drive on the weekend, and not touch my guitar or try to learn something, just listen to music as a fan of music. And that's usually the best way for me to kind of refresh, or like I said, just go on input mood, be inspired again. But that's also the magic of Nashville with the band tracking, because there are days when I walked in and wasn't necessarily feeling it, and one of my, brothers or sisters in the studio community was just on fire that day, and that's inspiring. You play up to that. Um, Not that it's a challenge, but someone else is going fast, and that can inspire you to want to go fast too. So there's been lots of days where I went in, feeling like the sponge was a little dry, and just like, well, man, this guy's, or girl's just, they're bringing it today, and that's inspiring to me. So you find a little extra gas in the tank sometimes on those occasions too.
Talking about stuff on the radio is stuff, that's old for you,
Oh yeah.
and you love listening to new stuff. So what's kind of the stuff that you're into when you want to listen to music?
Well, I have to be honest, I try to be diligent of, you know, on the DSPs, whether you're an Apple Music person or a Spotify person or Tidal or whatever. I try to seek out the new music playlist stuff, and that is what it is, because you're getting serviced things. So, try to keep that with a grain of salt. But I just try to intentionally find that kind of stuff. The new music Fridays. I'm always kind of scanning to see if there's a cool rock record, um, that I can, find, or what's happening in the pop world. Or I go the other way and I do listen to, music from the, you know, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, even the early 2000s, because that is still a lot of that can be in contrast to what's happening now.
Do you ever do one thing too much and miss the other? You ever like, man, I haven't, tracked anything in a while. I've just been producing.
Yeah, I definitely go spells. Guitar is it sadly probably takes the biggest backseat these days. Um, so, days like last week, like when I just got to go play guitar for Dan, and like we're cutting really good songs, and Kane's always been a great dude, and Dan's just a genius. Like those feel like spa days. Like that doesn't even feel like working to me. That's fun. That scratches the itch of kind of what got me started in this business anyway, just wanting to play guitar. So those are great. And yeah, when I go a long stretch of emailing or working on budgets for a label, or drum editing or something, I do start missing the guitar thing a little bit. So
I liked how you talk about you like rock music and you grew up on rock music and that you really enjoyed doing the Hardy album. Have you done anything like rock music or heavy since then?
You know, that's been a fun thing for me. Again, just the the waves of the stylistic waves, or what's in fashion or what's in vogue. It's been really really fun for me, um, to have this kind of hard rock, especially the early 2000s kind of late 90s, early 2000s rock thing resurge, and it finds its way into a lot of stuff, that I'm doing now, both in country and outside of the genre. Um, and that's been fun in the same way that the 90s country thing kind of coming back has been a lot of fun for me, because that was definitely a part of country music and guitar playing that I fell in love with, and spent a good chunk of my early 20s diving into. And so, on both sides, man, that's been really really fun to have people start asking, because you know 10 years ago, if they would have said something like that or referenced, Limp Biscuit or something, you'd have been like, yeah, I know you don't mean that. What's in here? What's the actual reference? And nowadays it's like, oh, they kind of mean it. They'll talk about Nirvana or whatever, and they're like, oh no, we want this to actually rock. Um, so it's been fun, and it's fun to do that for kind of directly within the genre things, or stuff that feels outside of the genre too. It's music just feels wide open these days, man. You never know, like, what I can look at someone's discography and before I go to work for them or something, and I think I know what they're going to ask for, and then nowadays you never know. I may be right, I may be wrong. So it's I mean, again, look no further than Post Malone making a country record. Shit, who the hell knows nowadays. I just did a record. I just played a few days on a record for Michael Bublé, and he's
Nice.
doing a record of like old country standards, like old George Jones songs and Willie Nelson things, and it's gonna be amazing. I mean, he sounds like him, but he didn't want us to do the swing thing. Like, we're doing kind of Nashville, more classic Nashville Cats, type of versions of these songs. It's just his voice on it, and it was really, really fun, man. So, like I said, you just never know nowadays.
People come to you and you get to say yes or no. What's the whole process of that?
For most of the major label stuff, the producers all have production coordinators, or, a lot of times in the case of Dan Huff, there's a guy, Mike Griffith, we all call Frog, who's his longtime production coordinator. And so, Frog always books the bands for Dan, then handles that and gets you scheduled and all that kind of stuff. And other producers have their people. And then some of the more, mid-level, or independent stuff, is more kind of P2P, where you just get a text from the producer. And a lot of times the artists will tell a producer in their meeting, or that they want to use whoever they want to use, me or otherwise. Um, and then I do still get random internet submissions. The only reason I keep an Instagram anymore is because I get people from you know Latin American countries, and people in Europe, and people in Japan that kind of connect with me that way, that reach out about, and then I move them over to email if it's something I can do, or I'm available. And it mostly just boils down to timeline. I just always ask, like, because I'm lucky enough, I stay pretty busy, so it's just kind of like, well, hey, when do you need it by? And if I can, as long as I can meet your delivery requirement, most of the time I'm willing to try to make it happen for somebody, you know.
Is there anything that's a definite no?
I mean, there are a few people I have worked for in the past that I've learned I don't enjoy working with. And that doesn't mean they're a bad person. It just, maybe just stylistically, it wasn't a good fit for me. And so, those people I'll kind of earmark. I always say I'll give anybody twice. I'll work for just about anybody two times. And if I didn't love it the second time, it's probably best for me to just kind of pass the next time it comes around, if it comes back around. Or occasionally I have been sent some things that I just kind of felt like uh, the quality of the track I had been sent. I didn't feel like it was in a place where I could do my job, um, to the best of my abilities. The quality of the recording or the state of the files I was sent, I just kind of felt like, hey, I don't think I can, really do what I do and service you, and charge what I'm going to charge. Um, in the same way that I think if you were going to charge somebody a lot of money to paint their house, and you showed up and it was like, hey, you got holes all in these walls and this thing's kind of falling down over here. Like, I know you want me to paint this house, but I can't take your money because I'm not gonna. This is not gonna come out how you or I want it.
Going back to studio work, I guess, is there any kind of things that happen where they weren't supposed to happen, but then they end up staying in the song?
Oh yeah, I mean that stuff happens all the time. That stuff happens all the time, especially when you're talking about full band tracking, because I mean, again, you got a lot of really talented people out there on the floor, and you're trying stuff, and in some ways it's pickup basketball. We're every once in a while somebody throws a behind the back pass, and who knows what inspired them to do it in the moment, but they did it. And to me, those moments are really what those are my favorite things about being a studio musician and getting to do the job of going in and cutting with amazing players and amazing studios, because you kind of never really know what's going to happen that day. Sometimes you're goofing off, sometimes it's an accident, whatever it can. I've gone out and started playing, like a riff that I was trying to learn from the demo, and I hadn't quite learned it yet, so I was playing it wrong, and they're like, "Hey, we actually like the way you're playing that better." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm still trying to figure out your thing." And they're like, "I don't don't we like that better?" I mean, that kind of stuff happens all the time. So it's a part of the daily work scenario here in our world.
Is there any um, stuff hidden in the songs, like stuff that happens that stays in that shouldn't have happened, but you don't fix it?
Oh, well, that's a very subjective question. I've definitely heard things that I thought like, "Whew, I wouldn't have left that in there." And you wonder like, did they know and do it on purpose, or did they not know? I mean, I definitely know of some songs that have like somebody cussing in the background, when there's all these mics in the it's real often when we're tracking as a band, you're out there on the floor and all these drum mics are out there live, and you know sometimes a room mic is 3 feet from my guitar, amp. And occasionally in the take, I might have made a mistake and, cussed something or whatever. I mean, that stuff is all over recordings, I think, oftentimes. If you went through any records or soloing all the tracks, you might be amazed what you found, rumbling around in there.
I did read about you're part of a publishing company,
Yeah, it's called Spirit Music.
Spirit Music. And so what's your role there?
Mean, my title is vice president of A&R, but I mean, really just, I kind of run the creative department here. And, we are just trying to sign songwriters and artists on the writing side that we believe in and love, and, play the same game as everybody else, where, we've got people in here writing songs for themselves or for other artists or for specific situations or for film and TV. Um, and my role, so to speak, is really largely just about using my connections to connect as many dots as I can. I mean, there's some more kind of black and white day-to-day things that I handle around here. But in the big picture, I'm here to, use my, 20 plus years in the business and try to get songs to the right people. And, when my writers write a great song, being able to go, hey Morgan, check this out. Can I give you this? And, or whoever the case is, and do that. But I listen to every song that gets turned in here by all of our writers every week and weigh in and give my opinion on it, and um, tell them when I think something, from my perspective could be better, and tell them, pat them on the back when I think they really nailed one, and try my best to get somebody to, record that song or find a life for that song outside of our building.
Hmm. So is it your job to match the song to the artist or pitch it to an artist you think it would work for?
Yeah, I mean, our whole staff, really is kind of going to pitch the song, but I definitely weigh in and say, who I think would be good fit for that stuff. And like I said, if I have a direct, line, which oftentimes I will, if I think something is, really suits Carrie Underwood or whoever, I know exactly who to give that to. That's going to have the best chance of being heard. Or oftentimes just send it to an artist or manager directly, and get that handled.
I also seen that you had like a ToneHub
Uh huh.
extension.
Yeah,
Yeah,
expansion pack. Yeah, yeah, that
expansion
was a
pack.
yeah. So I worked. So the company's called STL Tones, and the product is called ToneHub, and it's amps, guitar sounds for direct guitar recording. And they approached me over a year ago, and asked if I'd be interested. And you know, I'm super lucky. I have all the real stuff. You can't see my whole room in here, but I've got amps and cabinets and all the mics and all the gear and everything. And um, largely, I just have not had much application for direct guitar recording because I'm always in a situation where I've got all the stuff. Um, but recently, there have been some situations, particularly traveling and doing some stuff as Post Malone's musical director on the road, where it would have been really handy for me to have a direct guitar kind of recording scenario that I felt really good about and really liked. And when they came to me, they came as a recommendation through an engineer friend of mine, Dave Klaus, who I love and respect so much as an engineer in his ears. And he was like, "Man, you should check this out. It's pretty good." So they kind of got me set up to kind of model like to do a couple of models quickly and show me kind of how it works and how it would sound. And I was so impressed and just selfishly was like, well, I mean, obviously their pitch was to make one that we could market to people. But selfishly, I was like, this is something I can use. So I'm going to make this great, or as good as I can on my end, because it would be valuable to have this, to be able to just, plug straight into my, a quick interface or a laptop and be able to get my sounds, that's thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars worth of gear, and just kind of have it here in the thing. And so, I worked really, really hard on the models and the sounds, and really took my time making it as good as I could, felt like I could make it on the capture end. And I think they knocked it out of the park on the, whatever the ones and zeros juju they do to make it into a thing. I'm really, really, really happy with it. And send it around to some buddies that I really trust and love, and they kind of express some of the same things that, they're like, man, we feel like it captured a couple of things that were always missing from these type of things, the direct guitar stuff traditionally. And that's exactly what I wanted to do for myself. So yeah, really, really happy with how that came out, and happy other people are using it. I get tagged a lot still, and people download it and using it, or I get texts from buddies. It's like, hey, I finally got around to getting your thing. This is great, So it's rewarding when you work on a project for that long and people actually like it. So I'm really thankful for that.
So is making that expansion pack a pretty drawn out process?
Yeah, I mean, it was, I mean, off and on. Like I said, I mean, I worked on it for almost a year. It was just because to do it right and get the sounds right. And it's not the quickest process. So it would take me several hours to do 3 or 4 of those. And my pack has, I think, 70 presets in it. So there's about 6 amps, and there's multiple versions and settings of the amps and different miking combinations and stuff. So um, it was definitely a labor of love, so to speak. But I'm glad it's out in the world now.
Good thing you went ahead and got all those thousands of dollars in amps first and stuff so you could record it
Yeah,
for
yeah.
other people.
But that's why I talk about being lucky, and I try to always say this in some way. Um, when I got into this, and even in the beginning of playing sessions, like I didn't have all this stuff. You know, I and and to this day, I would still go. I did a thing the other day, and I took a Princeton reverb and 2 guitars. I am lucky that, again, over 20 plus years, I was able to get a hold of some cool pieces when they weren't as expensive as they are now. Like, I mean, some of this stuff would be cost prohibitive for me to go out and buy today. So, that's the thing. When everyone starts talking about the gear, I'm like, hey, listen, I've got some great stuff and I'm really, really lucky. But I didn't just wake up one day and decide I wanted to be a session guitar player and go spend $250,000 on amps and guitars. Like it, that what I didn't take out a small business loan to go, do all this. I had a few guitars and a couple amps, and I traded and bought and sold and traded and bought and sold, and did this for, like I said, over 2 decades to kind of have the amp and guitar and pedal collection I have now. And it's the same with my outboard gear, the mics and pre's and stuff that I use for recording here. I didn't just buy that stuff's expensive too. And I didn't just snatch that up. It took a lot of years of piecing it all together, and being really lucky and being successful and having some disposable income to do that.
Is it like your pride and joy though? Like when people come, you're like, hey, yeah, check this out though, you know? Like do you have like a
Uh,
favorite?
uh, um, I mean, I do have a couple things that are more sentimental than others as I'm looking around the room, but large in a way, I mean, they're tools to me. They're wrenches, and I just appreciate you know that this wrench makes this job a little bit easier, or this wrench is a little bit better suited for these types of applications. And um uh you know the only thing I'd kind of say is, like, yeah, on some level there's still that basic, like, kind of childlike thing that anytime I get to stand in front of a loud ass amp and turn it up and play guitar, like, that's really fun, and I kind of don't care what it is. That's all fun. But specific to recording, I've been able to figure out what a lot of these things do really well, and that kind of serves me.
So on a typical like that Post Malone album, like how many different setups would you say you used?
So anytime I go out and I'm on a tracking date, which is kind of what we call those full band sessions. There's a company that takes. I got a bunch of gear that just lives in their warehouse. They're called Soundcheck Nashville. And my guy Richie goes and he'll set it up. And so in that rig, there's about 6 amps and 2 cabinets and about 12 guitars and a pedal board. So anytime I get booked on a record, that stuff all goes and is set up at the studio, and is there for me to use. Now, I will sometimes rotate some guitars in and out of that, because I keep a lot of guitars here at my studio also. So sometimes there's a rotation of things that go in that vault and out of that vault and come back here and whatever. But there's always that handful of amps and all those guitars. And then, as I mentioned, we don't know what we're getting into 99% of the time. So it's not until often I'm hearing the first song, like when they go, okay, here's the first song we're going to play, I'm starting to make my decisions about what I'm going to use that day, or on that song. And so it's, um, it might be more traditional, or I go, oh, we're rocking today. Okay. Hey, I'm going to use that other cabinet. And will you move the mics over to that thing? And I'm actually going to start with my Marshall and do the, and this and that. And there's there's records I just play small little amps, on, and it's like all a Supro or a Tweed Deluxe or something like that. Uh, it's all just about casting, having the right tools and colors for the job. So, like I said, on that record with him, even though I had, 5 or 6 amps there, most of that record is either it's one of my old Bassman heads or a matchless head. I would say 90% of that are those two amps. Um, and 90% of it is a Telecaster or a Gretsch 6120. I played a Gretsch on a lot of that stuff, but I like rarely did I touch like a Les Paul or something like that on that record. Um, I played a lot of baritone on that record. Um, I played some Strat stuff on that record, but not a lot of big humbucker stuff, and none of the big heavy amps. It was kind of like loud, clean amps for most of that project. But again, when I showed up, I had no idea. I don't know what we're getting into. So, he could have easily said he was there to make a grunge record that day, and at that point you're going to go grab your Jazzmaster and plug it into your Marshall or whatever the case is. So I'm lucky to have all those colors at my disposal when we go do these tracking days.
Will you ever play something and then be like, no, it's going to sound better on a different setup, and then
All the time, all the time, all the time. And sometimes that's just your gut. Sometimes you plug in and it's like, this could be cooler. Let me try this. Let me try this. Sometimes it's searching. Sometimes you're just looking for a way to make it interesting, and that could be a pedal too on the ground. Um, but yeah, oftentimes I start, or sometimes the part will evolve. You start out with a guitar and an amp, and then you start getting all this direction, and they're like, yeah, and can you do this? And if it had this, and you're like, actually, if it's going to be all that, I think I should play it on this guitar and this because you know it may hold the tuning better, or you decide you want a Bigsby on it, or something. You need a tremolo arm for the part they're singing. So that stuff all just these are all just quick, we're in the middle of it and I'm going, oh yeah, if you want me to play that with a bend, I might grab this, or I might play this on my B-bender guitar instead, or I mean, we're just kind of running and gunning in those situations.
see, this is why I like doing this, man. I'd never known any of this stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah.
definitely the inside baseball stuff.
Yeah. Cool. Well, hey, I appreciate you coming on today.
Yeah, man, of course. Happy to do it. Thanks for having good questions, man.
Yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate it. And yeah, have a good one, man.
Cheers, same to you.